We all do it, right? We stare at the grand, monumental achievements of others, the overnight success story, the radical body transformation, the massive business launch, and we convince ourselves that the only way to get there is through these massive, painful, earth-shattering changes. We set these huge goals that require, heroic effort.
Exactly. We vastly overestimate that one massive once-in-a-lifetime shift, that big breakthrough moment.
Right.
But if you look closely at sustained, remarkable success, it is almost never about one major decision. It's about, completely underestimating the cumulative compounding power of getting just 1% better every single day.
Okay, let's unpack this core idea
Yeah.
of tiny changes, remarkable results. Our mission today is a deep dive into the blueprint for building habits that actually stick, drawn from the foundational work of James Clear. We are going to extract the essential practical framework, the bedrock system of the 4 laws of behavior change, and really try to understand the surprising science behind continuous improvement. This is about building a system that makes success inevitable, not accidental.
And to truly appreciate the power of small systems, we have to start with a phenomenal origin story. I mean, it perfectly encapsulates the entire philosophy.
His own story.
His own story, yeah. The author's entire system crystallized from his own experience recovering from a catastrophic, life-altering injury. It shows the compounding effect in action from the ground up.
I mean, catastrophic is an understatement. On the final day of his sophomore year of high school, he's standing near the batting cage, and a baseball bat slips out of a classmate's hands and strikes him directly between the eyes.
Wow.
We're talking about an impact so severe it resulted in a crushed nose bent into a distorted U shape, multiple skull fractures, and 2 shattered eye sockets. He lost consciousness immediately.
The physical trauma was just profound. He stopped breathing entirely, had repeated post-traumatic seizures,
Right.
and was eventually put into a medically induced coma to manage the brain swelling. I mean, the immediate prognosis was terrifying.
And the recovery was just brutal. For weeks, he suffered from debilitating double vision. He had to wear an eye patch. It took 8 grueling months before he was even clear to drive a car again.
Just think about that loss of basic independence.
Exactly. At physical therapy, he was literally practicing basic motor patterns, like walking in a straight line, which used to be completely second nature.
And for someone who loved baseball and had real dreams of playing professionally, this was a devastating emotional and physical setback.
He spent years just trying to get back to his pre-injury level.
Yeah, and he was struggling so much that the next year he actually got cut from the varsity baseball team. He was just, physically and psychologically broken.
So if the turning point wasn't some magical surgery or a sudden burst of genius, what was it?
Well, it happened 2 years later when he started college at Denison University. He realized he couldn't control the outcome of the injury, but he could control his environment and his daily actions.
The small things.
The very small things. He focused on these almost invisible improvements. While everyone else was doing the chaotic, messy college dorm thing, he started building good sleep habits.
Okay.
Making sure he went to bed early, woke up rested. He kept his room meticulously tidy, making his bed every morning. These actions, they sound so insignificant.
But they weren't about the cleanliness of the room, were they? They were about competence and internal control.
Precisely. It gave him back a sense of agency and confidence that the injury had completely stripped away.
And that confidence then spilled over into his academics.
Right. He earned straight A's his first year by consistently improving his study habits, showing up for class, reviewing his notes daily. He also made a habit of lifting weights multiple times a week.
Yeah.
Consistently transforming his 6'4" frame from, I think it was 170 to 200 pounds over the next few years.
And what was the stunning long-term result of this accumulation of all these minor, consistent acts?
6 years after that horrific, life-threatening accident, he was selected as the top male athlete at Denison University and named to the ESPN Academic All-America team.
Wow.
He didn't achieve greatness through a single heroic effort. He achieved it through the boring daily product of small but consistent habits.
It's the perfect illustration. The path from being cut from the varsity team to being the top athlete wasn't a jump. It was a slow, upward curve built entirely out of those small actions. That sets the stage perfectly for the philosophy underpinning the entire approach. We need to formalize what we mean by these tiny shifts. We have to define the atomic habit.
The source defines it as an extremely small amount of a thing, the single irreducible unit of a larger system.
To building blocks.
Good, the fundamental building blocks. We're talking about things that feel almost insignificant on their own, like, choosing one salad over a burrito or doing one push-up.
I love that terminology because it grounds the concept in physics. We often think of change in these big monolithic terms, but here we're talking about the smallest possible unit of positive action.
Exactly. And the reason these atomic habits matter so much is because of the compounding effect.
The math here it's just wild.
It's counterintuitive and genuinely astounding. If you can get just 1% better each day for 1 year, you don't just get 365% better.
Right.
Because of compounding, like compound interest on money, you end up 37 times better by the end of the year.
37 times better. And the inverse is equally terrifying.
Right.
If you let yourself get 1% worse each day.
You decline almost down to zero. That small daily deterioration accumulates into something catastrophic.
This really emphasizes that success isn't about these once-in-a-lifetime transformations. It's the product of daily habits multiplied by time.
Which is why the source tells us to focus far more on our trajectory, the direction we are moving, than on our current results.
That is such a crucial distinction, especially in a world obsessed with instant results. How does someone practically apply this trajectory focus, though?
Okay, think about two people financially. Imagine a broke person who starts consistently saving a little bit of money every single month. Their current result is bad. They're broke. But their trajectory is incredibly good. They are moving toward financial freedom.
Okay, I see.
Now, compare them to a millionaire who has terrible habits and spends more than they earn each month. Their current result is great, but their trajectory is terrible. Their spending habits will eventually lead to ruin no matter how much money they currently have.
The path matters infinitely more than the momentary snapshot. But this is the point where people quit, isn't it?
It is.
Because small changes feel absolutely ineffective at first. You start running every day, you start writing every morning, and after a month, you look at your progress and think, why can't I see any real change?
That's right. The most powerful outcomes of any compounding process are delayed. We expect this linear progression, but reality is usually exponential. We hit what is called the plateau of latent potential.
And that's where most people give up.
Exactly. They mistake a lack of visible progress for a lack of actual progress.
So how do you, the listener, psychologically survive that invisible period of work where you feel like you're constantly putting in effort but getting no reward?
It requires deep trust in the system. You have to know that the work is happening beneath the surface, much like geological pressure.
Okay.
Two tectonic plates can grind against each other for millions of years, building tension. The energy is accumulating, but it's invisible. Then, one day, the pressure exceeds the breaking point, and an earthquake erupts.
The change happens suddenly.
It happened suddenly, but it was all the previous years of grinding that made that sudden shift possible. The pressure was real, even when no one could see the outcome.
It's the famous stonecutter analogy, which is often quoted. A stonecutter hammers away at his rock maybe 100 times without a single crack showing.
Right.
But at the 101st blow, the rock suddenly splits in two. And it wasn't the last blow that did it. It was the accumulated efforts of all the previous blows. That patience is mastery, but it requires enduring a long period of what looks like failure.
So if compounding is the engine driving the results, the system is the map that keeps the engine running efficiently.
This is a major philosophical shift.
It is. We need to shift away from focusing on goals and towards focusing on the system instead.
Goals are about winning the game, losing 10 pounds, finishing the book, earning a degree.
And systems are about the continuous process of playing the game, the cycle of endless refinement and continuous improvement.
I see the problem. A goal creates a temporary finish line. Once you lose 10 pounds, what happens?
You stop the behavior and you likely regain the weight because the underlying system that produced the original weight gain hasn't changed.
Right. If you achieve your goal, say, cleaning your messy room, but you don't change the underlying habits that caused the mess in the first place, you'll just end up with a messy room again next week.
The goal solved a momentary problem, but the system guarantees a relapse. The problem isn't the ambition of the goal, it's the reliance on the goal.
So what's the defining mantra here?
It's this. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. If your system, your daily habits, is flawed, you will inevitably regress, regardless of how ambitious or inspiring your initial goals were.
The system is the ultimate determiner of your long-term success.
And if the system is the key, we have to make sure we are changing the right part of the system.
Right.
The source introduces the concept of the 3 layers of behavior change, often visualized like an onion, to pinpoint exactly where we need to focus our efforts.
This model is critical because it explains why some changes stick and others just don't.
Exactly. On the outermost layer, we have outcomes. This is what you get. The result, the tangible output, losing weight, writing a book, winning a championship.
And most people stop here. They just focus on the result they want.
Then the middle layer is processes. This is what you do. The actual implementation of habits and systems. For example, implementing a new gym routine, developing a daily meditation practice, or using a specific workflow to declutter your desk.
And then the deepest, most powerful layer
Is identity. This is who you believe you are, and your self-image, your core beliefs, your worldview, and the judgments you make about yourself and your capabilities. This is where the behavioral change truly originates.
Okay, so the core mistake most people make is focusing on the outcome. They say, I want to achieve X result.
Right.
But the solution is to reverse the direction of change. Instead of focusing on outcome-based habits, you have to focus on identity-based habits, who you wish to become.
Focusing on outcomes is externally driven. It leads to temporary fixes because it doesn't challenge the internal narrative.
So if you only focus on the outcome of losing weight,
You might diet until you hit that number. But unless you change the identity of the person who gained the weight, the person who defaults to unhealthy eating habits, you'll just repeat the cycle later. The change must be internal first, a philosophical shift about who you are.
the difference is subtle, but it's profoundly powerful when you see it illustrated. Take the example of resisting a temptation, like a cigarette.
Okay.
The first person says, no thanks, I'm trying to quit. They still view themselves deep down as a smoker who is currently attempting not to smoke.
Their internal belief remains unchanged.
Exactly. They're hoping their behavior will change. But the second person says, no thanks, I'm not a smoker.
That is a shift in identity. Smoking is part of their former life, not their current one. Their belief about themselves has changed, making the actual decision much easier because it aligns with their established self-concept.
This sounds almost too simple. Is it enough just to say you're a writer, or does the belief have to be proven?
It has to be proven through action, but the belief informs the action. Think about the story of Brian Clark, who had chewed his fingernails since he was young. He finally stopped through mindful willpower for a short time. Then his wife scheduled his first ever manicure. He assumed the monetary investment would stop him from chewing them.
Right.
But the true change came from an intrinsic shift in identity. He looked at his hands and felt pride in his attractive, well-cared-for nails.
So the intrinsic motivation came from reinforcing the identity of someone who takes pride in caring for their body.
Exactly. He wasn't just avoiding chewing a negative habit. He was being a non-chewer, a person who actively maintained his appearance.
That's a powerful connection. And this identity-first approach translates directly to life-changing choices, like the author's friend who lost over 100 pounds.
She did it by constantly asking herself one guiding question before every small decision. What would a healthy person do?
That is a phenomenal mental filter for navigating day-to-day choices.
It is, because it removes the internal debate about motivation or willpower. Would a healthy person take a cab or walk 5 blocks?
Would they order the burrito or the salad?
Exactly. By consistently casting votes for her desired identity, a healthy person, she eventually accumulated enough evidence to make that identity undeniable.
Because that's the underlying mechanism. Habits are evidence. Every action we take is literally a vote for the type of person we wish to become.
Right. Every time the author published an article every Monday and Thursday, it wasn't just about output, it reinforced his identity as a writer.
The more evidence you accumulate for a belief, the stronger that belief becomes.
You want to be a patient person, act patiently today. You want to be a productive person, show up and work for 10 minutes. These actions are proof, and that proof solidifies the deepest layer of change, making the habits stick naturally.
So to truly build these identity-based habits, we need to understand the underlying science. Where do habits even come from neurologically?
To answer that, we have to look back to the foundation of our understanding, laid down by a psychologist named Edward Thorndike in 1898.
Okay.
Thorndike conducted what are now classic experiments involving cats and these customized puzzle boxes. He would place a cat inside a box, and the cat could only escape to get food or reward by performing a simple, specific act, like pressing a lever or pulling a cord.
And when the cats were placed in the box for the first time, they just moved around randomly,
Right.
poking and pawing at everything.
Exactly. Until they accidentally stumbled upon the correct mechanism. They took a long time to escape initially.
But Thorndike tracked their behavior across many trials.
And he found that the process of learning began immediately after the door opened and the cat received the reward. Behaviors followed by satisfying consequences, the reward became more likely to occur.
And that's the law of effect.
Yes, and the origin of our understanding of the neurological habit cycle. The learning happens after the reward is received.
Which leads us directly to the 4 stages of the habit loop, that continuous neurological feedback loop that drives all behavior, good or bad.
And we can use this loop to engineer better behaviors. Step 1 is the cue.
The trigger.
The trigger. A sight, sound, smell, emotion, or piece of information that predicts a reward. It's about noticing the opportunity.
Okay. Step 2 is the craving.
This is the motivational force, the anticipation. It's the specific manifestation of a deeper, fundamental human motive like obtaining food or social connection. It's about wanting the reward. This is where the motivation actually originates.
Got it. Step 3 is the response.
This is the actual habit or action you perform, reading one page, tying your shoes, replying to an email. Whether the response occurs depends on 2 primary factors: your motivation, which is the craving, and the friction or ability required to perform the action.
And finally, step 4, the reward.
The reward closes the loop because it satisfies the craving, at least for a moment, and most importantly, it teaches the brain which actions are worth remembering in the future.
So the response is the action, but the reward is the learning mechanism.
Precisely. If any one of those 4 steps is missing, a habit will not form or be sustained. Without the first 3 steps, a behavior won't occur, but without the reward, it won't be repeated.
Let's talk about the neurological function of this loop. Efficiency. Why does the brain dedicate so much time to forming habits in the first place?
Well, habits are mental shortcuts learned from experience, and they are incredibly useful because they reduce cognitive load.
Okay.
The conscious mind is the bottleneck of the brain. It can only focus on one problem at a time. So habit formation is the brain's way of delegating control to the subconscious, freeing up conscious attention for essential tasks.
Like creating these automatic mental rules. If this, then that.
Exactly. But this incredible efficiency is also where the danger lies, especially with bad habits. As habits become automatic and non-conscious, we can fall into old, detrimental patterns before we even realize what's happening.
You don't even need to be aware of the cue for the habit to begin.
Right, which makes them so hard to fight. The book provides these striking examples of habits running entirely on autopilot.
I remember the one about the retail clerk.
Yes, she was trained to cut up used gift cards after they were swiped. After swiping a customer's actual valid credit card, she instinctively grabbed the scissors and cut the card in half.
Entirely on autopilot.
Completely on autopilot before realizing her mistake. It's terrifying.
And what about the former preschool teacher?
Oh, that one's great. She switched to a corporate job, but her old habit kicked in, and she kept asking her adult coworkers if they had washed their hands after using the bathroom.
Oh, no.
I mean, these actions are rooted so deeply, they persist even when the context changes entirely. This is the danger. Once the mental grooves are established, they are almost impossible to entirely erase.
So since mindless habits are hard to improve, the key, as Carl Jung noted, is to make the unconscious conscious. How do we interrupt this autopilot mode?
We can look to the Japanese railway safety system for a powerful, practical method, the technique known as pointing and calling.
Okay, what's that?
It's a ritual where train operators don't just look at objects, they actively point at critical objects, a signal, the timetable, the speedometer, and call out the command or observation aloud.
So like signal is green.
Exactly. Or all clear, doors closed. It seems like an unnecessary time waster, but the results are staggering. It reduces errors by up to 85% and cuts accidents by 30%.
Wow.
Even the MTA subway system in New York City saw a 57% drop in incorrectly berthed subways using a modified version.
So the principle isn't just about repetition. It's about elevating awareness from a non-conscious habit to a more conscious multisensory action.
That's it. You engage your eyes, hands, mouth, and ears. It forces you to interrupt the automatic circuit. You're forced to acknowledge the present reality, which is the necessary first step to designing a better response.
That foundational habit loop cue, craving, response, reward gives us the perfect practical framework.
Right.
If we want to create good habits, we simply make the cue, craving, response, and reward effective by making them obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. And if we want to break bad habits, we just invert those laws.
This is the application phase. We are taking the psychology and translating it into engineering principles for our own lives.
Let's dive into the first law, make it obvious. This is all about leveraging our environment and time to maximize the exposure to the cue.
The most direct way to make a cue obvious is through implementation intentions. This is a powerful, proactive plan you make beforehand about when and where to act. It's the antidote to vagueness.
And the format is super clear. It's, I will behavior at time and location.
Exactly. Instead of saying, I want to exercise more, you say, I will lift weights at 6:30 a.m. in the garage.
And the research backs this up, right?
Completely. Studies show that people who plan when and where to perform a new habit are far more likely to follow through. For example, simply writing down the specific date and time of a flu shot appointment dramatically increased vaccination rates.
So it's not a lack of motivation, but a lack of clarity that derails most people.
Precisely. We wait for inspiration to strike, but when 6:30 a.m. rolls around, if you haven't explicitly decided where you'll be, your brain defaults to the path of least resistance, which is sleep.
Okay, another powerful technique is habit stacking.
Yes, which leverages existing cues you already follow daily. Instead of trying to create a new time and place, you chain a new habit onto a reliable existing one. The format here is, after current habit, I will new habit.
For example, after I pour my morning coffee, I'll meditate for 60 seconds.
Or after I sit down for dinner, I will state one thing I'm grateful for. It works because your current habits, like brushing your teeth or shutting off your alarm, are already wired into your brain. You're just hijacking that existing neuronal pathway.
This also ties directly into something called the Diderot effect connection.
Right, which describes that chain reaction where one purchase or decision leads to the next, like you buy a new dress and suddenly you need new shoes and earrings to match.
That feeling of wanting consistency.
It's powerful. Habit stacking uses that natural chain reaction positively, where one small habit smoothly transitions into the next.
Moving from time-based cues to spatial cues, we have to talk about environment design.
Yes, because this addresses the fact that the vast majority of our sensory receptors are dedicated to sight. Visual cues are the greatest catalyst for our behavior. We have to become the architect of our world, making the cues for good habits unavoidable.
I'm thinking of that famous cafeteria study by Anne Thorndike.
A perfect, slightly unsettling example. She wanted to improve the diet of thousands of hospital staff and visitors without changing their motivation or willpower at all.
And she succeeded just by changing the choice architecture.
Exactly. She placed bottled water next to every food station and filled the main refrigerators with water, putting soda only in a few dedicated fridges tucked away. The results were dramatic. Soda sales subsequently dropped by 11.4%, while bottled water sales increased by 25.8%.
Nobody was told to change. They changed because water was made more obvious and convenient.
And this leads to the critical concept of one space, one use. You train your brain to link a specific habit with a specific context. The brain thrives on these specific, rigid associations.
I know this struggle firsthand from working remotely. If you work from the couch, it becomes hard to relax there later because your brain associates the couch with work stress.
That mixing of context creates a psychological mishmash of cues. The source cited a study instructing insomniacs only to get in bed when they were tired. If they couldn't sleep, they had to go to another room.
And over time,
their brains successfully reassociated the bed only with sleeping, and they fell asleep faster. The cue, the bed, only triggered the desired response, sleep.
Now for the flip side, inversion of the first law. Make it invisible.
Right. If we want to break a bad habit, we have to remove the cues entirely. The underlying truth here is crucial. Self-control is a short-term strategy, not a long-term one. Willpower is finite.
So it is far easier to avoid temptation than to resist it repeatedly.
It is. You need to reduce exposure to the cue that causes the habit. Once those mental grooves are carved into the brain, the goal is to cut the habit off at the source by making the cue invisible. Leave your phone in another room. Take the TV out of the bedroom.
Change your environment so temptation is simply not an option.
The second law deals with motivation and desire. Make it attractive. This centers entirely on the powerful role of dopamine.
Right. Habits are dopamine-driven feedback loops, especially highly habit-forming behaviors like drugs, junk food, and video games.
And we tend to think of dopamine as the pleasure molecule, but that's an oversimplification.
It's more an anticipation molecule.
Exactly. The research is clear. When a habit is learned, the dopamine spike occurs immediately after the cue is recognized, but before the reward is received. It makes you want to act, often more intensely than the reward itself.
That's where the addictive cycle begins. The craving, the anticipation, becomes the most powerful part of the loop.
So we need to artificially increase the anticipation of the rewards for our good habits, and we do that using temptation bundling.
Link an action you want to do with an action you need to do.
You're leveraging the high dopamine activity to motivate the low dopamine activity. The example of Ronan Byrne, the engineering student, is so inventive.
He desperately wanted to watch Netflix, but he needed to exercise.
So he engineered his stationary bike to his laptop so Netflix would only run if he cycled above a certain speed. If he slowed down, the show paused. He increased the attractiveness of exercise by bundling it with an immediate high dopamine reward.
And corporations are masters of this. Think about ABC branding their Thursday night lineup as TGIT. Thank God it's Thursday.
They didn't just market shows, they marketed an experience. They associated the thing they needed viewers to do, which was watch their shows, with activities viewers already wanted to do: relaxing, drinking wine, eating popcorn.
Beyond individual motivation, we also have to recognize the seductive pull of social norms. We are herd animals. We have an ancient, deep desire to belong.
And we imitate three groups. First, imitating the close, those in proximity. A 32-year study found that a person's chance of obesity increased by 57% if a friend became obese.
Wow.
We soak up the habits of those nearest to us without realizing it.
Second, imitating the many.
Right. We comply with group norms because we assume the majority must know something we don't. Solomon Asch's conformity experiments showed this dramatically. Subjects would choose an obviously incorrect line length rather than disagreeing with the group.
And third, imitating the powerful. We pursue status and prestige.
We mimic the behaviors of highly successful people we admire because we desire their success.
Now for the flip side, inversion of the second law. Make it unattractive. We have to deliberately reframe our mindset to remove the expectation of benefit from the bad habit.
One method is to remove the expected pleasure from the negative habit entirely. This is the approach of Alan Carr's method for quitting smoking. He instructs you to reframe the habit. You are not losing a relaxing break. You are gaining health, confidence, and freedom.
You remove the prediction that smoking brings any actual long-term benefit.
And it cripples the craving. We can also reframe our daily language, changing have to get to. Instead of saying, I have to wake up early for work, you say, I get to wake up early for work, which means I have a functioning body and a job.
That simple shift turns a burden into an opportunity.
And finally, using motivation rituals to condition the mind. Ed Lattimore, a boxer and writer, noticed his focus increased just by putting on his headphones, even if no music was playing. He had conditioned himself to associate focused work with that simple physical cue.
So the ritual shifted his mental state immediately, making the work process more attractive.
The third law, make it easy, acknowledges a fundamental truth of human nature, the law of least effort.
Our brain is wired to conserve energy. When deciding between two similar options, we naturally gravitate toward the one that requires the least amount of work.
This is not laziness, it's evolutionary efficiency. We see this principle play out on a massive historical scale. The movement of agriculture spread 2 to 3 times faster east-west across Eurasia than it did north-south in the Americas.
Why?
Because growing the same crop was easier, requiring less effort, across similar longitudes. The path of least resistance was profoundly consequential for civilization.
So friction reduction is key. We need to make good habits so easy, so convenient, that we will perform them even when motivation is non-existent.
This is the driving principle behind efficiency in business. Japanese lean production relentlessly focused on removing waste and friction, down to redesigning workspaces so workers didn't have to waste time twisting or turning to reach tools.
And even minor friction reduction yields massive returns.
Government efforts show this too. Linking directly to a tax form rather than forcing citizens to navigate a menu page increased the response rate from 19.2% to 23.4%.
So we can apply this by priming the environment for future use. The purpose of cleaning up isn't just to tidy, it's to prepare for the next action to be frictionless.
Oswald Knuckles, an IT developer, uses a strategy called resetting the room. When he leaves his car, he throws trash away. When he finishes watching TV, he puts the remote back and folds the blanket.
He's not just cleaning up after the last action. He's priming the environment to make the next visit frictionless. He's front-loading the effort for his future self.
It's proactive laziness, which is brilliant.
This ease makes mastering the decisive moment possible. Habits are like an entrance ramp to a highway. The small initial choice leads to the next behavior.
And those decisive moments are those forks in the road that determine the rest of your day.
Right. The moment you choose between changing into workout clothes or crashing onto the couch.
So you have to make the good choice the easier path. And since it's so easy to start too big and burn out, the countermeasure is the 2-minute rule.
This rule states that when starting a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do.
This scales down even difficult habits. Write 3 pages becomes write the first sentence. Run 3 miles becomes tie your running shoes. The task is so small it's ridiculous.
But isn't there a risk here that the 2-minute rule just becomes an excuse for procrastination? If I only tie my shoes, I haven't actually exercised.
That's a fair point, but you're missing the objective. The point is not the immediate large output. The point is to reinforce the identity and ensure the repetition of the first step.
So by showing up for 2 minutes, I'm casting a vote for my desired identity. I'm becoming the type of person who doesn't miss workouts.
Exactly. Once you start, momentum often takes over. It's better to do less than you hoped than to do nothing at all.
And now for the inversion. Inversion of the third law. Make it difficult. We must dramatically increase friction so the bad habit requires significant work to access.
This is where commitment devices come in, a choice made in the present that controls your future, often less rational actions.
The classic historical example is Victor Hugo, who needed to prevent himself from procrastinating on the Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Right. He locked all his fashionable clothes away in a chest, leaving himself only a large, unflattering shawl. This forced him to stay inside and write furiously, as he had no suitable clothing to go outdoors without embarrassment.
He created extreme, undeniable friction.
We use modern versions all the time, buying snack food in individual packages, or near ale, purchasing an outlet timer to cut power to the internet router at 10 p.m. every night. You eliminate the option to act in the future when your motivation is low.
We move to the final and perhaps most critical law. Make it satisfying. This is the law that ensures the behavior is repeated over time.
Yes, because as we discussed, without the reward, the learning doesn't happen. The challenge we face here is deeply embedded in our biology, the mismatch between immediate and delayed rewards.
Our human brain is operating with the same hardware as our Paleolithic ancestors who lived in an immediate return environment. They focused on the next meal, the immediate threat.
Modern society, however, is a delayed return environment. We work for a retirement decades away. We exercise today for fitness next year. Our brains experience what behavioral economists call time inconsistency.
We value the present reward far, far more than the future reward.
Which explains why bad habits are so tempting. The negative consequences are delayed, but the rewards are immediate. Instant gratification usually wins.
This leads to the cardinal rule of behavior change.
Which is, what is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided. Since instant gratification usually wins, we must find a way to bridge the gap until the delayed, significant rewards accumulate.
We do this through immediate reinforcement for good habits. We need to feel successful right away, even in a small way.
The case study of hand washing in Karachi, Pakistan perfectly illustrates this. Stephen Luby and his team introduced Safeguard soap to slum residents where disease was rampant.
They knew hand washing was important, but consistency was the problem.
So they partnered with P&G to provide Safeguard, which was designed to smell great and lather well. The sensory experience was the immediate satisfaction. The luxurious lather and pleasant scent provided an immediate, enjoyable payoff.
Even though the health benefits were delayed.
Exactly. The results were dramatic. A 52% drop in diarrhea and, crucially, sustained usage. 6 years later, over 95% of households still had a hand washing station with soap.
The pleasurable sensory experience was the immediate reinforcement needed to make the habit stick.
This is why chewing gum has satisfying flavors and why toothpaste has refreshing mint. These don't increase the dental effectiveness, but they create that immediate clean mouth feeling that acts as instant reinforcement.
It's tougher to find immediate satisfaction for avoidance, habits like skipping dessert. There's no physical reward when you resist temptation.
The solution is to make avoidance visible and tangible. Create a savings account labeled for a desired goal, like trip to Europe.
And whenever you successfully skip eating out, you immediately transfer $50 into that account.
The immediate reward is seeing your savings increase on your phone screen, making the act of deprivation instantly satisfying. And it's vital that the short-term reward must align with your long-term identity. If your reward for exercising is ice cream, those identities conflict.
But a reward like a massage reinforces taking care of your body.
It aligns perfectly. Finally, the ultimate strategy is the inversion of the fourth law. Make it unsatisfying. We must add an instant cost or punishment to the bad habit.
Let's discuss the nuclear football analogy. It's extremely provocative.
It was a suggestion made to fundamentally alter the decision-making process for launching a nuclear attack. The idea was that the nuclear launch code should be implanted next to the heart of a volunteer who accompanies the president.
So to launch an attack, the president would first have to commit a tangible, immediate, personal act of murder.
The intent is chilling but clear: to bring the delayed, global consequence of nuclear war into immediate, local, and undeniable reality for the decision-maker. This extreme friction makes the action highly unsatisfying in the moment.
For less apocalyptic habits, we use the habit contract.
A verbal or written agreement specifying commitment and immediate punishment, often involving an accountability partner. This creates an immediate social cost for failure.
Like Brian Harris's weight loss contract.
Yes. If he missed logging his food, he had to give his trainer $200, and most painfully for the Auburn fan, wear the rival Alabama hat every day for the rest of the quarter.
The cash penalty was painful, but the social embarrassment of wearing the rival team's hat, that was the immediate, tangible, and emotionally painful cost. We've covered the 4 laws, but achieving true mastery requires moving beyond mere habit formation and embracing continuous improvement. The first step here is realizing the difference between practice versus motion.
Right. Most people get stuck in motion planning, strategizing, theorizing. Motion feels productive, but it produces no outcome. Practice, or taking action, is the only effective form of learning because it provides immediate feedback.
I'm thinking of the photography students.
A perfect example. The professor split the class into 2 groups. The quantity group was graded solely on the number of photos they submitted. The quality group had to submit only 1 perfect photo.
And at the end of the term.
The quantity group produced all the best work. Why? Because they were busy taking photos, learning from mistakes, adjusting lenses, and honing their skills based on real-world feedback.
Repetition is a form of change.
And the brain confirms this. The London taxi drivers, who must memorize the vast network of London streets, have a significantly larger hippocampus, the area involved in spatial memory. Mastery comes from putting in the reps.
But reps aren't enough if you're playing the wrong game entirely. We must understand the role of genetics and personality.
Right. Genes predispose, but they don't predetermine behavior. They just push you towards certain areas of advantage. Look at the difference between Michael Phelps and Hicham El Guerrouj.
The swimmer versus the runner.
Phelps has a long torso and short legs, perfect for swimming. El Guerrouj has incredibly long legs and a short torso, perfect for running. They are both elite, but their bodies are optimized for radically different contexts.
The secret is choosing the field where your unique cluster of traits works to your advantage.
And your personality also provides genetic nudges. The big 5 personality traits, openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism, all have biological underpinnings.
So we need to build habits that work for our personality, not against it.
And finding your advantage often means focusing on combining skills. Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, recognized this. He noted his magic was the combination of being funnier than most people and drawing better than most, combined with a business background.
The rare, useful combination of 3 average skills.
Exactly. Once we're in the right game, how do we stay motivated? The answer is the Goldilocks rule.
Peak motivation occurs when working on tasks of just manageable difficulty.
It's that sweet spot, a 50-50 split between success and failure. If you play tennis against a child, you get bored. If you play a professional, you get frustrated. You need just enough winning to feel satisfaction and just enough wanting to feel the craving to continue.
And the final step to mastery is understanding the downside of habits. Once they become automatic, we risk complacency.
We need reflection and review to counteract this self-awareness gap. Mastery requires conscious, continuous refinement. Pat Riley, the Lakers coach, created the Career Best Effort CBE program.
Right. He measured players against their personal historical averages and demanded they improve their CBE score by just 1% over the course of the season.
This meant that even elite players were continuously looking for marginal conscious gains. We can apply this personally through systems like the annual review, revisiting core values, and assessing how well your systems are supporting them. It forces you back to the identity level. So we have completed our deep dive into the system and science of atomic habits. The true takeaway is that you are stacking small grains of sand, continually shifting the scale in your favor day after day.
Until you hit that tipping point.
Exactly. And the weight of the system begins working for you, not against you.
The power comes from engineering your daily life using the 4 laws of behavior change and their inversions, making good habits obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying, while clustering bad habits toward invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying.
And you have to recall the core defining principle. Desire initiates, pleasure sustains. The desire or craving gets you to act initially, but the immediate satisfaction, that feeling of a small, momentary win, is what ensures the behavior is repeated and ultimately compounded over time.
The secret to long-lasting results is never stopping that search for the next way to get 1% better. And as we close, here is a provocative thought to leave you with. Our ancient Paleolithic brain hardware is inherently biased toward immediate rewards. This makes us vulnerable to quick, unhealthy fixes while completely underestimating slow, long-term threats like a poor diet or lack of exercise.
Right.
Since all decisions are fundamentally emotional, the feeling of satisfaction comes first, then the behavior is repeated. Success ultimately rests on your ability to strategically use small, satisfying cues to trick your Paleolithic brain into choosing the actions that benefit your future, non-emotional goals.
So ask yourself, how can you best use the power of immediate pleasure and tiny wins to serve your long-term rational goals? What small, satisfying reward can you attach to the habit you dread starting tomorrow morning?